Hello, this is my presentation on sensitivity, capital budgeting, and risk analysis. My name is Steve Acuna, doing this presentation on behalf of American Military University, class BUSN 604. Starting off, sensitivity analysis. This is a study of how various sources of uncertainty in a mathematical model contribute to the model's overall uncertainty. Put it more simply, it's how one factor or variable affects other data. For example, how customer traffic may affect overall sales, how one increase in one may lead to an increase in the other, and vice versa. This is typically used to forecast data to see how you may maybe increase revenue by increasing one thing or another, or to see what may harm it. So you can determine what changes may or may not need to be made and see how certain times of the year may affect your sales, etc. And factors can include quantitative and qualitative data. Some examples of the quantitative data: you have company earnings, your revenue. That's pretty straightforward. It's just numbers, easily computed. Shares outstanding, your debt to equity ratio, number of competitors, historical data. These are factors are easy to put in numbers, especially dollars or maybe number of people. It's straightforward. It's easier to work with. Whereas qualitative are more abstract ideas like customer satisfaction, which you can put into a number, so to speak, but it is an opinion, so it's not an exact data. It's more of a feeling. Similarly, interest in product, employee morale, brand reputation, and social factors. These things are a little bit more difficult to factor in, but nonetheless are exceedingly important. Especially things like your employee morale that may affect your customer satisfaction and may affect your sales. But to easily determine what employee morale is difficult, not only because it's an expression of opinion, but you also have to factor in whether people are giving their honest opinion. And then there is capital budgeting. This is used to evaluate the potential for projects or investment, generally speaking, to make sure that the cost associated with the project or investment is justified by the increase in revenue or justified by the cost, or the payout for doing the project. There are three main methods of capital budgeting: discounted cash flow, which factors in the initial cost and future costs, and then the revenue produced as a result of those costs. To do this, you should set a threshold for what amount of revenue will justify the project based on its costs, like how much you want it to exceed your cost, and also it has to be a defined period, because given future cost, they could go into infinity if there is no defined period. And then there is payback analysis, which is the most simple, used commonly because of its simplicity, but also is not incredibly accurate. And it is simply analyzing how long until a project pays for itself given its costs. Very straightforward. Whereas throughput analysis is the most complicated. It considers the most factors, as it looks at the production of a company as a whole and how it is affected by the potential project or investment. Because of its complexity, may not be used as often, but it is the most accurate and should be used to give the most accurate picture of whether this investment or project is worthwhile. And then looking at risk, it's the potential that events may have an unexpected and noteworthy impact on results and is inherently uncertain. So whereas capital budgeting is the analysis of if something's worth it when it goes right, risk is more looking at how things may go wrong and identifying those vulnerabilities where things might go wrong so they can be addressed. A more detailed explanation, the perception of expected utility as how risk is individually perceived and socially amplified influences its experience and subsequent effects. So looking at both together, they should definitely both be considered. You can't just look at how things will go right, whereas what you would do in capital budgeting, you have to consider the potential for catastrophic results in risk and what obstacles you might have so that you can either address them to minimize them or overcome them should they happen. I think it's pretty silly if you don't do one or the other. You can't also just purely look at the risk of what could go wrong because you need to also consider success. But modern day can be risky. Things can change quickly, and you really have to consider a lot of factors because a lot can change instantly. And here's my references. That concludes this presentation.